Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Jagan Reddy. He is the managing partner at NetLogistik US, and we're going to talk a little bit about NetLogistik, of course, but we're also going to talk about a recent innovation day that they hosted and some of the takeaways from that. And we're also going to dive into the world of WMS, talking about some of the challenges that we're seeing out there and how WMS systems and WMSs are addressing those challenges. And we're also going to dive into Blue Yonder a little bit because that's what they specialize in. So we're going to hear a little bit about how do they differ from others, and then some best implementation practices as well, because we all love a good implementation, right? So, Jagan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you for having me, having NetLogistik say a few things about some of the topics that you outlined.
Definitely. Happy to get you guys on and happy to dive into some of these topics and also learn a little bit more about you guys as well. So why don't we start with that? Why don't you give me kind of a brief overview of what it is that NetLogistik is and what it is that you guys focus on and do within our space?
So we're a mid-sized company solely focused on supply chain technology solutions. We work with market leaders like Blue Yonder and some of the others as partners. We resell, implement, support, and manage software solutions. Working with our market leaders, we're about 600 people globally, presence in the US, in Latin America, and growing presence now in Europe. Being in business for 20 years. Known, recognized as a company that brings a lot of industry depth, along with implementing solutions, implementing successfully. That's how market sees us. That's how our partners like Blue Yonder see us. And we've had a successful last few years. We're looking to wrap up 2023 as a big growth year. Our U.S. business grew about 45% year over year.
Nice.
Globally, we grew somewhere between 20 and 25%.
Wow. Very nice.
Globally. Yeah, so doing very well.
Yeah, nice work, definitely. So I'm curious, I mean, as you operate globally in all these different regions, I mean, where are you seeing, I know you mentioned for you guys, you're seeing a lot of growth in the U.S. for this year, but are there any particular regions of the world right now that are kind of in more demand for supply chain technologies and systems because they're seeing a lot of growth? Yeah.
Latin America continues to be our, call it normal growth region, but the aggressive growth is in the U.S. and Europe, where investments in supply chains, particularly in what we do, that's warehouse, transportation, labor, and order management systems, just massive amounts of investments going in, given a lot of the changes that we're seeing as consumers, how we buy stuff and how we get that stuff delivered to us, and that change in expectations is driving companies, whether whether a company is a consumer brand company or retailer, or now it's now, becoming a norm in B2B commerce as well, right? Getting orders placed and getting those orders shipped and received in full on time is critical for companies. And that's where these investments are becoming extremely critical for them. And that's where we're seeing the growth.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I was curious about that. I mean, as we see like a lot of, like you said, a lot of changes and shifts in where things are coming from and how they're being delivered. I was curious, like where you're seeing that growth at. I mean, would you say, because obviously there's a lot of talk about Latin America and kind of nearshoring, I guess, so to speak, and bringing, a lot of distribution center warehousing to Mexico, especially close to the U.S. border. Are you seeing that when companies are doing that? Are they investing in technology up front, or are they kind of going maybe like with the basics to start and then growing into a little more technology?
Yeah, nearshoring has been... it's been around for a number of years, the talk about nearshoring. But just the last, call it 3+ years with COVID and disruptions, generally disruptions caused by whether they are trade tensions between, countries, geopolitical tensions, how those tensions could really massively negatively impact supply chains. Companies are now becoming very, very focused last 2 years, right, of nearshoring and what makes most sense as to where they manufacture and distribute. Mexico is becoming an attractive destination for that from the traditional Far East manufacturing approaches that used to be in place. And as Mexico is quickly becoming that, Mexico and some of the other countries in Latin America, we will see investments and growth because of nearshoring focus. It's early. We've not seen clear signs of big investments and those investments driving our growth. We've not yet seen it, but we foresee that in 2025, 26 as we look to the next years.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I was curious about that. Yeah.
I was going to add one of the key topics in our Mexico City Innovation Day sessions was nearshoring, the positive impact of nearshoring on supply chains generally, and what role does NetLogistik play in that shift. We're foreseeing it.
Interesting. Yeah. I was curious about that because, you hear a lot of talk of moving to Mexico and, setting up operations there. And then, a lot of interest in Texas as well, because it's close to the border to get goods over and that type of thing. But I was curious, are they kind of setting up foundation, testing waters a little bit before, that investment kind of comes in technology and things like that. And it sounds like that's the case. And we'll be seeing a little more investment, as you're saying, in the next year to 2 years, 3 years. So very interesting there. And you mentioned the Innovation Day. So you guys host this Innovation Day and recently hosted it, I think back in November here. So tell us a little bit about that. What is that and what does that entail?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, so there are, as you know, Kevin, there are a lot of events and conferences. A lot of them are hosted and run by software companies,
right,
bringing their customers and prospects and other thought leaders and share insights. A lot of those tend to be very focused on what that company does, where their focus lies. What we find is that there is a need, and we hear this from our customers, for someone like us to bring a neutral, objective forum to have discussions about where the industry is going, how companies should think about their supply chain investments, and the trends and what they should be preparing themselves for. Mm. And that's how we think about our innovation day. We think about ourselves as a facilitator of innovation in supply chain. And we embrace partners, companies that are current partners or new partnerships who can bring new things to the conversation. Mm. And as more people join the conversation, both customers who are in need of understanding what the trends are, as well as companies who are doing some innovative things in supply chain, if we can be part of making that connection and provide that value, that's what we want to do. And it certainly helps us by being part of the conversation, by being seen as a thought leader. It certainly helps us as we do that facilitation. That's how we approached our Innovation Day.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity to, like you said, be able to learn these new things that are happening and get your head around the trends and things that maybe you're hearing discussion around and really get focused on and figure out how can you bring those within your supply chain or start to think about how to bring those within your supply chain. So I'm curious for you, what was your biggest takeaway from the Innovation Day this year?
Yeah. So companies, whether they're a manufacturer or a retailer or a 3PL or a distributor, they're all thinking about what's next in supply chain. What trends should they be paying attention to? And of those trends, which ones are near-term trends or trends where they need to take action, which ones are more directional, something that they need to pay attention to the next 3 to 5 years. And companies and leaders in companies, both on the business side, operations leaders, as well as IT leaders, are eager to be part of that conversation. So they're number one, they're wanting to understand what their near-term focus should be while they're paying attention to the kind of the medium, long-term trends. The second is, given the traditional software that's been around for a long time, the TMS, the WMS, the labor management system, OMS, as those boundaries are drawn, right? WMS does this, TMS does this, OMS does this. What they are finding is there are edges of WMS that overlaps with a TMS and edges of TMS that overlaps with OMS. Those edges seem to be where there is a lot of need for, call it innovation, so that supply chain can function like a single organism, as opposed to being seen as WMS does this, TMS does this, or, well, that's planning versus execution. And that's where we play a big role, right? Where a WMS may say, hey, that's not part of WMS, that's part of TMS. And TMS may say, well, that's not part of us. That should be in the WMS. So we connect the dots to again have a solution that functions for the business regardless of the boundaries of a WMS versus a TMS versus labor. So that's the second thing. The third thing, there's a lot of focus on automation in operations. That's within warehouses, we're seeing a lot of mobile automation or mobile robots driven automation compared to the historical fixed infrastructure automation of ASRS or those or pick to light or conveyors. Right? Those tend to be heavy fixed infrastructure, big investments compared to mobile goods to person or mobile robot helping picking or other critical tasks in warehouses. We're seeing a lot of that movement. And these tend to be, these new approaches also tend to be more conducive for pilots. You can do a small pilot in a small part of the operation, learn, and then expand, as opposed to the historical big investments. Once you put an ASRS in, there's no pilot, right?
Yeah.
You just put
it's right? Kind of permanent.
Yeah, it's permanent. And there's a lot of interest there. And there's also on more process automation, where software bots taking on process automation, right? Taking emails and turning those emails into something, or taking documents and turning into some actionable things. And you hear about this as robotics process automation, where bots are being written. We see more and more of that on the transportation side, because a lot of what goes on in transportation still is very much emails and, not faxes anymore, but a lot of PDF files flying back and forth. And we're seeing a good bit of that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because there is so much going on around those different things. And like you said, it's hard to do a pilot with some of these technologies because it's pretty big undertaking to put them in place. And then, even a bigger undertaking if the pilot doesn't work out and you want to take it out or something like that. Right. So it's really interesting to see that and see also how people are kind of going about that and trying to figure out how to do those pilots in a sense. But, with all those things going on, I mean, tell us a little bit about how, from a WMS perspective, like how are WMSs, and I guess specifically Blue Yonder, because that's what you guys work with. I mean, how are they addressing like some of those challenges or some of those needs within the industry and the marketplace to be able to do some of those flexible things?
Yeah. WMSs, they've been around since the mid 90s, since that's around when I started my career in the space, as call it the first WMSs were being written and brought to market. So when you look at market leaders like Blue Yonder and the others in, whether it's Gartner's Magic Quadrant and other analysts, how they see and who they see as market leaders, from a functional perspective, feature function perspective, they're all relatively at parity, right? Where the next set of things are being done are now add to or to complement those robust features and functions of WMS. How do you take the data within, and insights that you can draw from that data, and how do you put a layer of, call it, intelligence on top of it, so that WMS can, through, again, that data and insights, can sense changes in operations, can recommend changes in whether it's configuration changes or process changes to adapt to changing conditions within a warehouse, whether the changes are day-to-day changes or changes over time. So that layer of intelligence to sense, adapt to changing conditions is where we see the market leaders, right, Blue Yonders and others, they're putting a lot of emphasis on those things. And those things don't have to be big investments to add on that layer. They're offering those types of things as what are called microservices that you can turn on with relatively low investment, quick implementations. So we're seeing that layer. And the second thing is as companies are thinking more and more about inventory and where they should position their inventory, given some of the behavioral changes that are happening, whether it's B2C setting or B2B setting, there's, this proliferation that we're seeing of, call it micro fulfillment centers or smaller footprint operations. And those operations have very specific set of needs. Do they need, a big, robust WMS, or does that big, robust, WMS serve maybe their national, regional distribution centers, but then, micro fulfillment centers or urban fulfillment centers need a different footprint of a solution that has different set of needs. These tend to be smaller operations in terms of size, 50,000, 100,000 square feet operations with 10, 15 people in each operation. Yeah. So we're seeing another flavor of, call it a fulfillment system.
Interesting.
Right, to complement the core WMS that's being offered.
Interesting. So would that be two systems that are running like side by side or hand in hand, I guess?
Side by side, yeah. Okay. Very complementary, right?
Interesting.
They share, the call it the data and the insights across them.
Okay.
And the key for everyone is so you're not developing another WMS that competes with the core WMS, right? So they're navigating it carefully to say that, okay, that the new solution that's being offered is for this specific purpose, right? It's for these smaller fulfillment centers, whereas your core WMS will be the WMS that you need for your large national, regional distribution centers.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so interesting to see, like you're mentioning, all these kind of different variations now in the way that operations are running or looking like, even from a micro fulfillment standpoint to some of these mega warehouses that are out there. It's really interesting how companies are positioning themselves now. I mean, even if you look at Amazon, I mean, they're putting more of a focus in smaller buildings now, when before they were known for these behemoths, right? So it's pretty interesting to see that shift, and it's interesting to see how the systems are adapting to that as well. So really interesting to get that kind of insight from you there. So you mentioned in there too as well, you said quick implementation. So I'm curious about that, right? Because I think when we talk about implementation, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but sometimes implementations can be a little painful, I guess, and maybe historically there's a lot of maybe talk around implementations not being so quick, right? So tell us a little bit about the quick implementation you mentioned there, and kind of like how things have evolved and changed around implementation to maybe not make it such a scary word anymore.
Yeah, all of this starts with recognizing that WMS deployments, they're complex.
Yeah.
Because you are managing, orchestrating physical resources, whether they're people, space, product, robots. These are physical resources which have to be orchestrated and managed while managing, particularly from a people perspective, the change that they go through as they implement, let's say, a WMS. So the notion of speed and quick, I think about it differently, right? I think it's more important to bring the organization through the change process, and doing it right, getting it done right, is more of a priority than getting it done in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, or 16 weeks. That said, we certainly, no one has patience anymore for an implementation that goes on for years. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to get these systems deployed and successfully deployed within, few months, let's say. Whether that's, 10 weeks, 16 weeks, not a material difference.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why my guidance always is, let's start with the objectives, right? Why are you choosing to deploy a WMS? Is it a technology change primarily? Taking some old legacy warehouse system doesn't serve your needs anymore and deploying a new modern WMS for the future? Or is it labor efficiencies that you're looking to gain, or inventory accuracy that you're struggling with? What are those objectives? Be very clear on those objectives, because that's what you need to communicate to everyone that's going to go through this change. Why are we doing this? That's important. And then from there, be realistic about the speed, the change management, the thorough capturing of requirements. What does the business need to be able to do with the new WMS? Making sure those requirements are properly communicated to whoever is doing the implementation. Because in the end, the implementation is the company's initiative, not whoever is implementing. It's not a project for the provider. It's a project it's an initiative. It's a substantial initiative, a change initiative for the company that's going to go through this. So they have to be clear on what the business needs to be able to do with the new solution, communicate it, make sure the design as it gets developed by the provider, someone like us or whoever is working with the company to implement, gets a solution design, captures the business needs. And from there, making sure there's a good, thorough test plan, test management that's in place. So all of the business needs are properly tested. Business requirements are properly tested. So that when the decision is made to go, everyone has a level of comfort that requirements were documented, solution was designed for those requirements and tested. And there's always, a set of unexpected things which happen as you go live. Plan for that unexpected, whatever those unexpected things are. Now I say, expect the unexpected. And when those things come up, calmly work through, whatever that came up, collaboratively come up with a solution. Those things should be, few things. Should be edge scenarios or corner scenarios that were not captured. We'll work through them. And the important thing is give people that are going through this change breathing room to deal with change. Right? It's new systems, and this is how they will run the business going forward. Give them some breathing room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great point to be able to, I think you get lost sometimes in the system aspect, and you forget about that human element. And that is such an important thing. I mean, especially when you're talking about, in any system, but, especially when you're talking about a WMS, and there really is going to be an impact to that end user, all the way from, the manager that's looking up stuff in a WMS all the way to the floor, or the people that are, doing picking, packing, and utilizing WMS to be able to do that. So a really good and thoughtful insight there on how to go about implementation and what to think of at its core is really that the human element, because you could have a totally smooth implementation from a system technical standpoint, and then if it's just a surprise to workers on the floor, you're going to get some resistance, and it's not going to go as well as you thought it would. And you won't get that initial kind of efficiency, productivity boost that you're probably hoping for, and probably one of the reasons you decided to switch or decided to put in a new WMS, right? So so very interesting stuff here, and very interesting to hear from you too on all these different insights and things happening within the industry, and really appreciate you coming on to talk to us about this. If people are interested in learning more about NetLogistik and talking to you more about some of these things and their WMS potentially overall, what's the best way to find out more information or get in touch with you?
Yeah, our website is the best way, netlogistik.com. We're on social media platforms like LinkedIn and others. And as we present ourselves on shows like yours, certainly, as you hear of someone that has a need, would love to hear from people who know us. Get a good warm referral is important for us. That's why we put a lot of emphasis on our partnerships. Mm-hmm. We're next to our partners, really thinking about their objectives and aspirations as a company, whether it's Blue Yonder or others, and supporting their growth. And we get a lot of warm introductions and referrals from our partners. Yeah, thank you, Kevin, for having me and having NetLogistik on the show. It's been a great conversation. Good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And great answers too, as well, I'll say. So you complimented my good questions. But we will definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Jagan, thank you very much for coming on the show today and sharing all these great insights with us.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.